The question is, should Jewish professors at a university be forced to support an anti-Israel union? And to address that, Mark Mix, the guy who champions the right to work at the National Right to Work Committee, joins me now. Mark, good to have you back. And since I haven't talked to you since then, Happy New Year.
Lars, thank you. It's good to be on with you, and thanks for bringing attention to this case. I mean, this is another one of those interesting cases that is created by laws that force collectivism on people with different ideas, different values, different nationalities, all kinds of different things. And, you know, the government, in their divine wisdom for all of us, want to force us into everybody being exactly the same, and that can't work in a system like this. But yet, here we have a bunch of professors at the City University of New York that are forced to accept and to associate with a union that has no love, no feelings for their views on culture or anything else, and we've got to fix that.
I mean, because usually, Mark, you and I are talking about people who are members of various unions in America, and we say, do you realize that your union gives money to political candidates who don't share your point of view? You know, they give mostly to Democrats and liberals, and they give very little, if anything at all, to Republicans and conservatives. But in this case, these professors are Jewish, and they're being forced to pay dues to a union that they say is anti-Semitic?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the monopoly of collectivism of the union model that we have both in the private sector, that started out in the private sector and now has made its way in a major way. In fact, more government union members in America today than private sector union members, that has made it into government. And we're seeing it here in this so-called institution of higher education, where the rights of these individuals are basically subservient to those of a private organization that claims to represent them in the workplace. This so-called professional staff Congress apparently is a professional staff tyranny, because these workers can get no relief from their workplace. They have resigned their union membership, Lars, and we've talked about this before. I mean, the Hobson's choice that workers are forced into is, in order to protect your political rights, you have to give up your workplace rights, meaning if you're not a union member but you're represented by the union, you can't vote in a union election. You can't run for union office. You can't vote on the contract that governs your employment. All of these things you can't do because you want to protect your political rights. In this case, you have another group of professors that are actually being harassed, intimidated, and it's basically being encouraged by the university and by this so-called Congress that represents them in the workplace. And so this Hobson's choice displays itself in issues like this. I mean, you and I have talked about the political component of it, and that's real. And we've litigated a case back in 1988 at the U.S. Supreme Court that gave private sector workers the ability to basically get out of that political component, but they had to give up their workplace rights. In 2018, we won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court called Janus v. Ashley that got government workers their ability to get out of the political component. But how do you get out of a component where these people, they're not spending money politically, they're just radicalized about who you are, what you are, and the country that you support?
Well, and Mark, it's one thing, I'm not a fan of unions, and I tell people that. I say, but if you want to belong to one and pay a bunch of dues and then be treated as though you're a widget in a factory and all workers are the same, they all essentially get paid the same. It's one thing when the unions say, well, we're going to support candidates in American politics or state politics that will vote for more money for our members. They can make that argument. What the heck does the Professional Staff Congress care? Why would they pass a resolution in support of the Palestinians and condemning Israel? What does that have to do with workplace issues involving professors at an American university? I can't even get up enough crayons and construction paper to draw the connection between the Palestinians and condemning Israel and something that affects professors at an American university. Well, do they have any connection?
Yeah, they don't, and that's the point. They feel, because they're unaccountable, these union officials that have this monopoly bargaining privilege, and they are the single voice in the workplace, they basically have no accountability. And so they can do whatever they want. And we've seen this not only in a union like this at a so-called institution of higher education, but we see it in the private sector, we see it in the public sector, because of this monopoly power, this forced association that we believe violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. And, in the Janus case, we got the idea of speech being this forced speech by unions as being a violation of the First Amendment, the right to free speech. The next battle is this associational battle. And this one, frankly, Lars, they may think we're over the target here because immediately when we entered representation for these professors, they said that we have a history of white supremacism and racist. So I know we're over the target. They may be really scared that we're winning. That this one may go to the court because the issues here are just so ripe for consideration.
I think, and by the way, Mark's using, it's one of my favorite metaphors, but it's, you're over the target when the flak gets heavy. And people say, okay, since we weren't alive during World War II, we don't exactly get that one. But those of us know the history. When people are shooting at you, you're getting close to the target. Mark, keep up the great work of the National Right to Work Committee, and we appreciate your time.
We'll do it, Lars. Thank you.
Absolutely. Keep it up.